Welcome to Bible Study 2.0. The secular world would have us believe the Bible is inaccurate and it cannot be proven. That is not true. The prophecy in Daniel 9:25 is perhaps the greatest of them all. It tells us when the Messiah and King would appear in our history. At the time this prophecy was written, Jerusalem was still standing. And yet the prophecy speaks of a time yet future to that event. The start date for the prophecy is not given, only the event that starts the clock for when the Messiah will arrive. That start date is recorded in Nehemiah. The inaccuracy of the Jewish calendar and the Julian calendar, which we used until about the mid-15th century, is compounded by the inaccuracy of our current calendar. It has to be adjusted by adding a leap day, not every 4 years, but almost every 4 years, so it's a very complicated system to try and undo. Now, Sir Robert Anderson, back in 1894, he did just that. He worked out a way to figure out the prophecy in Daniel 9:25 to show the exact day that the Messiah, the King, would arrive. But it's a fairly complicated way to do it because of all of the times that we do not record a leap day every 4 years. Once we figure out the number of days in the prophecy, all we have to do is divide that time by the average number of days that it takes the Earth to orbit the Sun, and we have the correct answer. So it's a much easier way to do it, and all that's required is a handheld calculator. Now, why on earth would we even bother doing this? Well, the Bible tells us to. 2 Timothy 2:15, Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Well, what does dividing mean? It means that that is to dissect, to look at it, take it apart, and then speak correctly of the divine message. Proverbs 25:2, It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. As a born-again Christian, I consider myself to be a king in that I am an inheritor of the throne of David, as are you, presumably. Isaiah 42:9, Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare before they spring forth, I tell you of them. And that, of course, is again speaking of prophecy. So, Daniel 9:25, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem under the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Now, that's from the King James. And King James is one of the few Bibles that actually mentions the wall, and yet it's an exceptionally important event, as we'll get to in just a bit. There were several decrees given to rebuild Jerusalem, but only one of those decrees included rebuilding the walls. So without that word walls in there, it's very difficult to prove this prophecy. So from the time the commandment for the walls of Jerusalem to be restored to the arrival of the King and Messiah will be 7 plus 60 plus 2 equals 69 weeks. So just as the British have a time period called a fortnight, which is a 2-week period, the Jews in the time of Daniel had a normal 7-day week, a week of months, 7 months, and a week of years. So each week that's being referred to then would be 7 years. So if we multiply 69 times 7 on your little handheld calculator, that'll give us the number of years in the prophecy. So your calculator should show 483 years. Now, how long is a prophetic year? Well, again, Sir Robert Anderson figured this out and actually received his knighthood for figuring out what a prophetic year was. Revelation 12:14 mentioned 3.5 years. Revelation 12:6, 1,260 days. Again, a different verse, a different way to explain a time period. Revelation 13:5, 42 months. So when we do the arithmetic here, very simply in your head, 1260 days divided by 3.5 years equals 42 months. 1260 divided by 3.5 equals 360 days in a prophetic year. 1260 days divided by 42 months equals 3.5 years. 30 times 42 equals 1,260. And 42 divided by 12 equals 30. So 30 days in each month and 12 months in a year, 360 days. A prophetic year equals 360 days. So now with that information, we can multiply 69 weeks times 7 to give us the number of years in the prophecy. So your calculator should show 483 years. So 483 times a prophetic year, 360 days, equals 173,880 days. Now, our Gregorian calendar is based on 365.25 days, and it's pretty close, but not 100%. So, the average time it takes for the Earth to revolve around the Sun is 365.2422 days. So, again, a quick recap here. Now, I know we're going slow, but, bear with me. There are 69 weeks of years in the prophecy, with each week having 7 years. 483 years times 360 days equals 173,880 days. And again, the average time for Earth to make one revolution around the Sun is 365.2422 days. Now, what are we going to do with that information? Well, let's begin to figure out the prophecy in Gregorian terms. And again, this is a new way to figure it out. So if we divide 173,800 days by a prophetic year, 365.2422 days, we get 476.0677 years. Subtract 476 on your calculator, and we have a remainder of 0.677 days. So, what does that give us? Well, again, 0.0677 times 365.2422 equals 24.7128 days. If we subtract the 24 to get the remainder, which would be 0.7128 times 24 hours in a day, we get 1,700 metric hours, or 5 p.m. as we in the West measure time. The prophecy now is in terms we can understand because it's using the time format of today, the Gregorian calendar, but without leap days. It says the Messiah, the King, will arrive 476 years and 24 days and around 5 p.m. after the decree to restore the walls of Jerusalem. So what we have to do now is take that information and convert it to what actually happened historically. All Jewish orders were dated the 1st of Nisan. We have a start date. So Robert Anderson asked the Royal Observatory to ascertain the exact date for the 1st of Nisan in 445 BC. They told him it would be March the 14th. So the start date for the decree to rebuild the walls is March 14th, 445 BC. So we kind of need to remember that a little bit. Again, the start date for the prophecy to begin is March 14th, 445 BC. The triumphal entry was April 6th, 32 AD. So, Simple arithmetic again. 445 BC plus 32 equals 477 years, but since there is no year 0 in the Gregorian calendar, we subtract 1 year to arrive at 476 years. And surprisingly, there are 24 days between March 14th and April the 6th. So, converting the prophecy to Gregorian terms, we've shown the prophecy in Daniel 9:25 to be exactly correct, and also taken to extremes shows Jesus arriving around 5 p.m. Mark 11:11 tells us Jesus arrived at the temple about eventide, which would be about 6 p.m. That would give him about an hour to make his way through the crowd and arrive at the temple spoken of in Mark. So what kind of conclusion do we have? Only a being from outside our time domain could accurately predict an event, yet future to Daniel, would start the clock to the most important event in history, some 500 years in advance, and be 100% accurate. So again, Isaiah 42:9, Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. The dates used and much of the material is from the book The Coming Prince by Sir Robert Anderson. Now again, he used a system of removing leap days to figure out the prophecy, but I found that to be cumbersome. This system removes the problem with dealing with leap days simply by using the average time over the last few thousand years of how long it takes for the Earth to revolve around the Sun. So, to get the book The Coming Prince, it's downloadable on the internet, and you can do a Google search for The Coming Prince by Sir Robert Anderson, or you can try and follow the link that's in here if you're a quick typist. But I suppose you could hit pause and just type it in from there if you wish. I hope you've enjoyed today's Bible study, and that we see you again real soon.